Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Plum Talks. I'm very excited today to have Nava Hopkins with us. She is a wealth of experience, and we're so lucky to have her. Hi, Nava. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. So a quick introduction about Nava. She has a wealth of experience in many topics touching on digital marketing. She's been in the industry for more than 15 years, and she worked in in-house marketing teams. She worked in agencies, and of course, she worked in SaaS businesses as well, serving our community. And one thing about Nava is that she loves giving back. She loves being in touch with people in the community, and this spans not just professional settings, but universities as well. She's in the international speaking circuit, so don't be surprised if you see her in the future in some events that you will be taking part in. She's currently working at Optimizer, and she's an avid publisher. She shares her thoughts in many different publications in the industry, including Search Engine Journal and Search Engine Land. So Nava, welcome again.
Thank you so much. That was a very gracious intro.
Fantastic. So today we're going to talk about automation in PPC, pay-per-click. That's our main topic. But of course, automation is a cross-cutting topic, and we would love to get your personal insights on some of the current trends in automation, and how you see things, your personal take on things, where you see things going, evolving. And as you know, our community is a community of practitioners from around the world. Some of our viewers are veterans, just like you. Some of them are just starting. So I'm sure they might, have a different level of knowledge in terms of automation in PPC. But I think it's such a hot topic that a lot of people will be interested in this session. So I guess I would like to start with, again, your personal take on automation, specifically artificial intelligence being a mainstream technology in our industry. Do you think we are at the mercy of AI-driven ad platforms as marketers, or do we still have a say in strategy and management? What do you think?
So it's actually really funny. My personal take on all of this is that these pieces have been around us, among us for a very long time. It's just that we didn't call it AI. It was machine learning, and machine learning didn't stick. It didn't resonate with us. So before I get into my take on at the mercy of, I want to kind of put a general disclaimer. I don't actually think we are in the state of true AI. I think we are in a state of advanced machine learning models, and we just are able to identify that intelligent leap, and we're calling it AI to kind of get people on board, to get people excited. I personally don't actually think it's true AI. With that out of the way, we are absolutely not at the quote unquote mercy. There is a ton of control still at our disposal. The catch is the levers that we pull and what we do have changed drastically. So for example, back in 2016 or so, when close variants or when ing, id, misspelling, so on and so forth, kind of overtook keywords in Google and then eventually in Microsoft, a lot of people kind of complained and said, my levels of control. And then the match types changed. My levels of control. And what's interesting is that as we have marched ever forward, it's not that we necessarily need to build out every single little keyword, every single little bid, every single little thing. It's instead we need to be able to communicate what is driving the success for our business. So what you and your listeners can do to retain control, have really solid sources of truth. That means making sure that your analytics or whatever other platform, whether it's GA4 or something else you have set up, is correct and accurate and tracking correctly, and that you're feeding that information back into the platforms. The second is that you are setting realistic goals for your campaigns, i.e., you're budgeting enough for what you're asking the campaign to do, and you're setting realistic ROAS goals, one of the things, or return on ad spend goals. One of the things that's actually very interesting, Kirk Williams kind of broke the news and on LinkedIn, and we've all kind of been talking about it, is that Google is doing away with a target ROAS goal for PMax or Performance Max. And initially the thought is, well, oh no, that's terrible, our lever of control. But humans are very prone to making mistakes on setting ROAS goals that are unreasonable or unrealistic. And so it's not necessarily about levers of control. It's about allowing the data to guide us and making intelligent choices. The things that we absolutely still have control and have control even beyond the AI changes are creative. We can own every ounce of our creative. We may need to opt into changing out different placements. We may need to say yes to, in saying yes to Performance Max, there are going to be placements that we may not have intended initially to advertise, but we still can communicate with the platform to say what kind of creative we want to use. And then also, there are still standard siloed campaigns out there. This is not to say that they perform better or worse than leaning into fully automated, but 100%, there are still levers of control, but your best control is going to be the data that you own, your conversion tracking and making sure that that's set correctly, and that you are setting realistic goals for the campaigns that you're running. And that applies to every single ad channel.
Wow, that was great. A lot to unpack there, though. I was really happy to hear that you mentioned the measurement piece in terms of analytics and owning your data. That is so true. And in our team, when we talk to clients, we tell them, don't spend a single dollar or pound or euro before you actually start measuring things. So I think that's definitely something that I'm in full agreement with. And then what you were saying about Performance Max and target ROAS changing is quite interesting too. Of course, Googles of this world are they're sort of setting out the play field for us. We don't have perhaps as many options as we had in the past, and the profession is changing in terms of being able to be a lot more proficient in terms of data and being able to analyze that data, not in the sense that, I have to open up a spreadsheet or run my statistical models, because the platforms are also doing that heavy lifting for us now and giving us automated insights. So in the last 10-15 years, you must have seen the role of a PPC strategist change quite a bit. So could you maybe open that a bit more for us? Like if you were entering the industry today as a PPC specialist, or if you're hiring someone, let's say, what kind of skills would you look at and see if they have a good growth potential?
So I'll start answering that question with the question I ask in every interview. And I actually will ask it sometimes just when I'm meeting someone for the first time, is what is your favorite innovation from the past 6 months and why? And it could be anything. And the reason why I ask that question is it tells me what the person thinks is innovative. It tells me where they're going, what they're paying attention to, what excites them. But the more important part of that question is the why. Mm-hmm. A lot of PPC practitioners in the old days were basically grunt workforce. You did a lot of manual work. It was a lot of data entry. It was a lot of just do this manual task again and again and again and again and again. And what's actually very exciting and very interesting about entering the industry at this point is that role is obsolete, but the strategist role absolutely is there. The creative role is absolutely there. The data engineer is absolutely there. And so the most useful tool in your arsenal that you can work on is your inquisitive mind, is your thirst for knowledge, your desire to constantly unpack why is this happening. And I will say between PPC and SEO, and to be fair, this is true of social as well, it's a lot easier to understand why something is happening than in some of the other disciplines, because typically you will have more data at your disposal and you can have a reasonable amount of causation and correlation. Sometimes in SEO, it's a little bit tougher and you kind of are guessing, did this happen? Did it not happen? I'm getting a lot of conflicting information. We are very lucky that we tend to have fairly straightforward sources of truth. One shout out I will put out there, Ginny Marvin over at Google, she actually came from the pool of PPC practitioners and went to go be the liaison at Google. I would definitely follow her if you don't already. She shares a lot of really useful information, but part of that sharing is giving practitioners time to adjust their strategy. So that's the next really important tool, is you cannot ever get comfortable in your knowledge of what you know. There are some industries where you just keep going at the same thing and you just do it again and again and again. You get your 10,000 hours of mastery and then you're a master. Yeah. This is not it. Here you have to be very comfortable failing fast, kind of checking your assumptions. A really good example of this, I used to, with a passion, absolute raging passion, hate search with display select or search with display expansion. And the reason I hated it is because you were basically saying, Google, here's my search or search engine result page bid. Take my text ad that I made for that and put it in a display spot and overbid for the placement. And it was terrible and it was atrocious and it was beyond the worst. But then I had a client who had an account set up with all search with display select, and they were doing great. And I was like, why are they doing great? Let me dig into this. And what it turned out is that because image extensions or the image assets have since come to the scene, users who want to bypass the video need of Performance Max and retain all the quote unquote levers of control within a search campaign can do that with search with display select or search with display expansion. This is not to say that that will outperform a traditional search campaign or a PMAX campaign. Most cases it won't, but being willing to be comfortable testing that assumption and being willing to kind of challenge yourself is really, really critical, and being confident and comfortable with yourself to know that even if you're wrong in this instance, the logic of how you got to your original perspective and the logic of how you get to your next perspective is critical. And the final thing I'll say, and then I know we probably need to move on, is just being ethical. There are a lot of charlatans in the industry, and there are a lot of people that will try to kind of game the system to get ahead. And I cannot overstate how much karma finds you. The ad networks have pre-built in systems that will get your account suspended, or if you're doing less than scrupulous practices. But even just from a human perspective, there are humans behind the brands that we serve. There are real people's lives behind the people that we serve. And if you approach managing accounts from a perspective of, I want to help you, I want to help people, I want to help your customers live their best life, the work that you do will be so much better. So I realize that this isn't very technical advice, but it's probably the most important to help you differentiate yourself from all the other, I just want to make a quick buck practitioners that are out there.
I am so much in agreement with that. Thank you so much. And I mean, yeah, it's not technical, but it's such a fundamental thing, isn't it? I mean, honesty, integrity, people talk about this, but not everyone follows the recipe. It's actually, in my mind, the absolutely best long-term strategy that you can have in terms of your relationship with your clients, giving them the right expectations, delivering on time. If you promise something, definitely delivering, and then of course with the audiences that you're targeting in your campaigns, as you said, instead of trying to make a quick buck, trying to nurture that long-term trust-based relationship is probably going to be even more important, because with AI generated images, videos, all sorts of ad creatives, it's already starting. There's this explosion in terms of all sorts of ads coming our way in terms of the variety as well. And if you're trying to do something let's say that's not very ethical. You may succeed, or you think you may succeed in the short term. A bit like back in the day with SEO, stuffing keywords. It's nothing nasty necessarily, but little nudges that you think are going to help you. The chances are you will, as you said, you will get caught by the platforms. But even if you don't, it's not a long-term sort of advantage in terms of what you're trying to achieve for yourself or for your clients, right? So being true to yourself, being true to yourself.
I'm really glad you mentioned audiences, because we are in the privacy first world. Your first party audiences, i.e. the relationships that you nurture, are the most important asset that you have. And if you burn those, you're going to be in trouble. In particular, why I say this is important. Many of the ad networks are leaning into conversion-based audiences. Your offline conversions turning into an audience that you can target, but then also audiences as signals. And if you keep targeting people who are not responding to you, eventually Google's going to take the hint, Microsoft's going to take the hint, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of them are going to take the hint and say, well, this person doesn't take care of their people. I'm not going to send traffic their way. So for all of you who maybe feel like, man, I see this company and they're doing all these things and it drives me nuts. Ignore them. Focus on you. Focus on cultivating those amazing relationships, because once you have it, you're going to be in the long run set up for much better success.
Thank you. I think that's great advice. And I just want to come back to one thing that you mentioned about experimentation and how you talked about causality, you talked about correlations, little sort of nuggets of information in there that could help us perhaps test our assumptions, our hypotheses. And PPC is wonderful for that. And I'm not sure if a lot of practitioners fully understand that. So I just want to discuss it a bit more in terms of some of the best practices, because let's take SEO for a second. You may try different strategies in SEO. It could be technical, on-page optimizations. You do your best, you try to build backlinks. But in terms of looking at the effect of these things, you may have to wait 6 months, a year, maybe even longer. The time span tends to be much, much longer. Whereas depending on your budget and your audience size, in PPC, you may be able to check off some experiments in a week, or maybe even in a couple of days. So how would you, I suppose the question is, when you think of experimentation in the age of automation, how do you approach that? What would be your advice in terms of, let's say, if your budget is $100, how much of that would you allocate to experimentation, and what would be the ratio?
Well, if my budget's $100, I'm not advertising on PPC. Candidly,
right? I didn't mean $100.
But I want to get to that point about the size of budget, because how you approach experimentation for if you have a little budget is very different than how you approach it if you have a larger budget. So the golden rule of any test is that you need 1,000 people for statistical significance. That is the golden rule. I firmly believe it's the same reason why you need to have 1,000 people for a targeting audience. In a lot of CRO tools or conversion rate optimization tools, you'll see that they wait until you have at least 1,000. Most of them wait until you have at least 10,000 in order to say that, yes, this conclusively is correct. For brands that have smaller budgets, your litmus test of whether something is effective or not is whether you are making more money, less money, or the same amount of money, and the quality of life is better or worse the same. So for example, local service ads is actually a really good example. Local service ads are a slightly different ad format than traditional Google search. They take a little bit of time to set up from a background check perspective, but essentially for service-based brands, they can have a number, their image, they call, and it's usually tied to your Google Business Profile. Microsoft now has their own version called the professional service ads. Happy to include some resources for this podcast to go in depth more. But the reason why I use that as an example is that many folks will turn it on and have 2 weeks of dead space because they set a budget that is too small for what is needed. And you actually want to set a larger budget than what you intend, and then it will actually spend less. So for example, local service ads, I typically will start a profile at somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 per week, and I'll expect it to spend maybe $1,000 to $3,000 for the month, not per week, for the month. And so knowing the rules of engagement per ad channel and what budgets are going to be needed per channel will help you understand if you should even be testing it at all, because too small of a budget, you're not going to get anything. But if you have 100 people, and we'll say, and that's the more useful question, not $100, but 100 people, and 10 of them become customers off of one, like your normal way, and 3 become customers off of your new way, but they are vastly more useful, their customer value is much higher, it's worth exploring that test a little bit more. It's not worth getting rid of your old way because it's a really small size, but it's kind of a way to think about it from a smaller standpoint. If you're a larger brand and you have the budget, obviously use your data thresholds. But if you're a smaller brand and you need to kind of come up with your own ways to MacGyver an A/B test, that's definitely a way to consider it. The other thing I will say about testing, you want to control your variables. So if you have a lot of beautiful, beautiful ads, you love your ads, and you're testing your landing pages, don't then introduce also ad copy tests. Don't then also introduce targeting tests. Stick with the landing page test. If, however, it's the same landing page and you want to test different audience, different account structures, because account structures are a worthwhile test as well, that's also an option. When it comes to account structure, I typically will pick my level B. So when I say level B, there's my top earner, top margin, location, service, whatever, and then there's everything else. So I'll pick something from the everything else, test it and see how it goes. And if it works well, then I'll apply. The final piece I'll say to testing means different things to different people. If you are testing just to test, you should have enough success and scale within your organization already that you can justify that budget going to test just to innovate and see what you can do better. And that in every branch, it gets to that point. For everyone else, if you are struggling on leads, there is no reason to test just to test. You should be having a very targeted test and have a very specific timeline for your test. Typically, any test that you do, you should give yourself anywhere between 30 to 60 days, ideally a quarter, to fully see that test out, because then you can have a quarter to compare. It's lovely if you can look at year over year data, but even if you can't, just being able to look at a 30-day difference and 60-day, 90-day difference. And then also, when it comes to testing, do not feel like you have to pay top dollar for really expensive testing tools. There are amazing free tools like Microsoft Clarity. They'll tell you how users are behaving. You can also set up time for your customer success organization, your sales organization, product organization to come together and talk. So just use the resources at your hand.
Fantastic. So maybe just a quick summary. You mentioned measurement again. You were talking about, forget about X number of dollars, but think about the number of people that you're bringing, and then observe what you're doing. And to observe that, of course, you have to measure. Your measurement piece has to be in place. That was very, very nice. You talked about statistical significance. And so I guess instead of sort of obsessing about a certain budget number, look at the level for you to be able to achieve that statistical significance, and then see if you have enough money for it. Because if it looks like you won't be able to reach to that point, maybe you're a bit too early in the process in terms of running structured experiments. And then you were talking about don't test too many things at the same time, so that I guess you can tease out what actually made the difference. Is it your ad creatives? Is it the offer on your landing page? Is it perhaps the ad copy that you're trying? I think those are very, very valuable pieces of advice. I hope people will put them in practice. Fantastic. So at this point, I'm going to change gears a little bit. We have this little tradition in Plum Talks to talk about failures, not in a negative sense, but in a very frank, open way, as a sort of a learning experience for all of us. Because probably you've seen this too. People love talking about success stories, and they throw big numbers. Our budget was at $100 million, and we 10x'd it, and then this was the conversion rate, which is great because you can learn a lot from sort of best practices, success stories too. But we also think that failures can actually teach us a lot. And this is a little cultural, perhaps. In certain cultures, people are more hesitant to take risks. In some other cultures, in the States, for example, it's sort of a given that you're going to take those risks and try and see what happens. So with that introduction, I wanted to ask you about like some failures that come to your mind, either things that you experienced yourself or you observed maybe other people go through. What was the failure, and why did it happen, like a post-mortem, and what was the main lesson learned? Anything that comes to your mind?
I'm going to share three things.
Wow.
One is from a sales perspective of selling a client that shouldn't have been sold. One is a software piece of how to uncover whether something is not quite right in the software. And then I had another one, and I'm sure it will come to me, but I might only end up with two. So one of the things I feel very strongly about, and I will actually talk people out of working with me, or like I'll agree to an hour call just to help you if I don't think it's going to work. And it stems from actually one client in particular. I knew that this client was not going to budget enough. And for the sake of the conversation, I'm not going to name the client, but I'm just going to give the example. And the client wanted to achieve like 20-30% more calls with a budget that I never would sign off on for the industry that they were in. And the reason why I had those reservations is because there's an average cost per click kind of floor, and it's been coming more and more as the industry has changed. And so if you're not prepared to invest a certain amount, it's just not going to work. Like it doesn't make sense to take the money to manage the account if you're kind of destined for failure. The second reason I was very hesitant is it seemed like the client needed more someone to kind of pass their negativity onto, as opposed to like actually have a partner to help. And despite all of that, the person I was working with at the time really like begged me and said, please just let us take this on. Let us take this on. Let us take this on. It'll mean that we get this other great business if you say yes to this other bit, if you say yes to it. And I relented, and it was the worst experience ever. It was just terrible. And it ended up actually souring the business that other person really wanted, because there was broken trust. And so that's where if you can be honest with yourself about what a sales qualified lead looks like as a vendor, and be transparent with clients about what is a reasonable expectation for what they are prepared to invest, whether it's in SEO, whether it's a PPC, whatever, you will have a much better working relationship. If you only focus on the, well, I can get that quick buck, or you'll be fine. Like you just deal with it so we get this. They probably would have actually had a very happy relationship with just the thing that they wanted if they just focused on getting that. But because they tried to loop in PPC, it didn't work out. So the moral of the story: be open, be transparent about all those things, but also trust your gut. If you know in your heart of hearts it's not going to work, don't force it. Yeah, the next piece, go ahead.
Maybe if you could recap it again, maybe learn how to say no in the nicest way possible, and don't chase every single opportunity, because at the end, like, of course we all want new clients, but maybe we should focus on a certain type of client, whatever that might be for your case, right?
Exactly.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one. Sorry, I interrupted you there, but you were moving to the second failure.
No worries. So we'll go with the second one. So I have a knack for finding every single bug. It's one of the reasons that typically, and I've gravitated so much to SaaS work, is I really love understanding user journey and how things are working. And in one of my roles, I was responsible for kind of getting feedback from customers that were having a bad experience. And based off of all of that data, I found out that we had the tool, and this was from another tool in my experience, had started removing things when we said we were pausing them. And what was interesting is that I had brought it up initially and said, and I was brushed off. And I was brushed off because I have a righteous fury streak. I was so upset on behalf of the clients that were being hurt by our tool that I was like, we have to fix it, we have to fix it, we have to fix it. And even though what I was saying was correct, and even though what I was advocating for was 100% correct, because I came in all like, we have to fix this right now, everyone shut down. My manager was amazing, saw the data and said, listen, let me explore this. And because she dug in and reviewed the data, and technically, I mean, yes, she was higher up than me, so she had an easier time getting into the room, but because she went through that approach of being a lot more calm and saying like, listen, here's the data, we see that there's a trend. She was absolutely right. Like we need to fix this. So the lesson, I mean, yes, also in software is like QA your tools, but also when you're working across departments, be mindful that even though you might be right, you don't want to make people hate that you're right. You want to make it a collaborative, cooperative, wonderful experience. And it has been a journey to get to a point where even if I'm really mad at something that has happened, or even if it's like, this is the worst, it just calm, like present the data, just be at peace, because if you are correct, it will come out and it will be fine. And you don't need to be the righteous fury hero saving everybody. You need to actually achieve your goal. And so don't let your need to make it happen right away get in the way of it actually happening.
What I love about our chat today is, we talked about automation a lot and some of the technical aspects about that, but we also talk a lot about some of these soft skills, maybe even personality traits that are going to be really very much in demand as we go forward in this industry. We talked about trust. You're talking about having maybe patience, or being able to have a bit more empathy in terms of how you would approach someone with something that you really feel passionate about, which is the perfect segue, because the next section we have is called the rapid fire. And here the idea is just going through a quick list of questions and just telling us what pops into your mind. I'm not going to ask you things like, if you could be any animal, which animal would you be? Nothing like that. Still related to
a fox or a wolf, by the way.
I like that too. But so let's start with the soft skills. Like if you were again giving some advice to someone who's perhaps just starting out in PPC, and if you had to choose 3 soft skills, what would they be?
An inquisitive mind, being kind to yourself, as in just having patience for yourself, And I know we talked a lot about ethics, and I feel like the third one is the ethics piece, but it's specifically, I think it's more the empathy. That you have empathy for your customers, empathy for the platforms, empathy for all of it. So we'll go with empathy as the last one.
Fantastic. Thank you. Second question. How would you describe what you do at work to your grandparents?
So, a funny story about this. I have a 101-year-old grandma. She is on LinkedIn. She is on Facebook.
You're saying hi to her
Yeah,
from her.
she's amazing. Like I mean, she doesn't do it anymore, but she used to manage all of her finances. So I'm very blessed in my grandma, because she's a little bit more savvy than others. But essentially, how I would describe it to me be someone else's grandma who's maybe not, or a grandparents who are maybe less savvy. I help people find what they are looking for, and I also help brands communicate as meaningfully as possible to those that they want to help, while being the least annoying as possible.
That's amazing, Nava. I mean, that's perfect. That's perfect, because I think that really sums up what we're trying to do, right? Helping people, and trying not to be too annoying as they're going about their day. Fantastic. Next question. Top 3 things that you love about Performance Max as a campaign type.
In your sheet, it had it as one answer. Am I allowed to give a little bit more color?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. So the first thing I love is that it encourages brands that otherwise would not have budgeted for top of funnel to actually think about top of funnel. Many brands, due to lack of creative assets, whether it's people, team, time, skill, whatever, have left video and display on the table, and PMax kind of forces the issue. And a lot of the friction that people have around video is more because they can't control the video creative. But ironically, PMax's automation around video creation is meant to help those folks cross that hurdle. So I really love that it helps there. The second thing I really love is that it helps us get used to a world where the people matter more than the individual things that they're saying. And what I mean by that is that keywords are actually still an audience signal in Performance Max. You still can have your list of keywords, and that's actually, we have a tool in Optimizer that will actually help you find your top search terms and plug them in as an audience signal. And you can do that also with your general search terms. Just pull a list of your top search terms, put them in as an audience signal. But what I love about that is that it gets us to think about the people and who it is behind the search as opposed to the individual query. So our account structures are focused more on solving human problems than kind of playing the game of Google and now that Microsoft has Performance Max. The final thing I really like about Performance Max is that as much as there is still a debate about whether conversion value or conversions are better suited, Performance Max kind of pushed the conversation where lead gen or non-e-commerce oriented brands have to actually think about the value of their customer. And it's not hard to come up with some sort of value per customer. Essentially, just think about what is the average value, how many leads do you need to get per conversion type, and then plug in that conversion rate, and you have your value per conversion. It's not that complicated. But a lot of people got kind of paralyzed and stuck and scared, and they didn't take advantage of that tool. So I think Performance Max was very good at kind of pushing people over the fear, and then now they can take advantage of it.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. I'm making notes here myself. Some of these things are actually very, very useful. Thank you. The next thing I wanted to ask is about Performance Max again. And the reason I'm choosing that is because it's sort of the flagship product right now in terms of the level of automation. What are some of the things you don't like about it? Some of the things that you wished you had, but you don't currently have in it, some maybe element of control that you may have lost. Anything that you wished was different?
So I will play a song on my violin for feed only based performance max campaigns. The fact that we now have to include video if you wanted to just do feed only for e-commerce right ahead of the shopping season, that's not great. And the reason I don't like it is not because it's not that I don't believe in the video piece of it. It's just that I think disrupting a whole bunch of brand structure and strategy just before the main shopping season is kind of not great. But that's what it is. The other thing about Performance Max that I wish was better, it's not that I don't like, but I wish it was better, is the data that we get out of the box. And what I will say to Microsoft's credit, the data that we will get out of Microsoft Performance Max is light years ahead of what we get out of Google's. And I think Microsoft is keeping Google's Performance Max accountable, much in the way that a lot of people talk about Microsoft AI versus Google AI, and that Microsoft kind of forced Google's hand. We talk about Google being the only option or people feeling compelled. There are other options. And I think that even though we might be losing some levers of control, even though we might also mourn the loss of dynamic search ads, it's not officially dead, but I mean, it's going that way. I think having networks keeping each other accountable is where there won't necessarily be losers when it comes to Performance Max. The campaign type itself is actually a very useful campaign type. It helps you think about your business from an objective standpoint as opposed to playing the PPC account structure game standpoint. But it is important that there's more than just one player in the space.
Couldn't agree more. One thing I'm going to do today is to check out Microsoft's Performance Max. I'm actually very excited to see what that's like. And I remember being able to ask a few questions to the PMax product team at Google. And, instead of, because they built a bit of a black box, this is my personal take. And
I believe it's open beta. So you'll just need to raise your hand and say that you want to get into it for Microsoft.
Right, Microsoft, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that too. But such a great overview of PMax as a campaign type in general and its role in the future of automation. So the last rapid fire question: are you worried about losing your job to AI?
So I did, for any of you who've seen me talk, a deck around man versus machine, where the punchline was man x machine. There is no loss of job in the near future for really any of us. There are changes of tasks. I am not going to be replaced by AI. I might be replaced by someone who is more savvy at communicating with the system than I am. So the skills that I'm currently really avidly focusing on to make sure that I'm as future-proof as possible, I'm making sure that I'm regularly practicing with all of the different AI tools. I actually have my own subscription to ChatGPT and OpenAI, so I can play with it and work on it, get used to the prompts. The other thing is I am avidly checking the interface and seeing where is AI popping up in ad platforms, and is the performance better, worse, or the same when I opt into it, so that I can confidently communicate to folks about the AI. And then finally, from just a general communication standpoint, the soft skills that we talked about earlier in the episode, that is going to be what keeps you in your job. It's not going to be necessarily your super amazing performance in an individual instance. It's going to be the fact that you are a fundamental part of how the business operates on a whole. Because at the end of the day, marketing is a department within the greater beast. PPC, SEO, social CRO, all of those are parts within the system, and your ability to collaborate with other humans and to understand human needs will help not just in working with prospects and customer marketing, but also in working with your colleagues and growing together.
Super. Thank you so much. Wow, that went by very quickly, and I realized that we didn't even talk about Optimizer, which is a great tool or a set of tools that can be used for automation. Could you give us a quick overview of Optimizer and how it might help practitioners in our community?
Yep. Thank you for letting me do a little pitch. So essentially, Optimizer is an automation layering suite. We help folks manage their Google, their Microsoft, their Amazon, their Yahoo, Amazon Social Optimizer Social is coming. It's going to help with a whole bunch of other social suites. Ahead of the shopping season, we have our smart shopping tool, which actually brings back target ROAS for standard shopping. So if you're really feeling the stress about Performance Max, come check out what we can do to help there. The other piece that's particularly helpful is also our dashboard white labeling functionality for agencies. But yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that we do within Optimizer, but if it had to be boiled down to a single simple thing, it's that we help you layer automations so that you can achieve more with AI rather than fearing it.
Fantastic. So I encourage our viewers to go check out Optimizer today. I also encourage them to subscribe to our channel to be part of future Plum Talks. And Nava, I would like to give you the floor for closing out today's session. Anything in your mind that you would like to share as sort of the last few words of today's session?
First, thank you so much for having me. Second, if there's one thing that everyone takes away from this session, it's be kind to yourself. This is a time of a lot of change. We just came out of a time of a lot of turmoil. It is very reasonable to have a lot of doubt and a lot of fear and a lot of stress. And you will do your best work when you take the time out to be kind to yourself. So as much as you might be investing this time in learning and in growing, also invest the time in doing at least one kind thing for yourself per day. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, I'm on there. I'm also on Threads. You can check out my publications. I often will talk about PPC from a perspective of not just the technical stuff, but also the more empathetic human soft skills. And yeah, if I can ever be of help, just reach out.
Thank you so much, Nava, and have a wonderful day.
You as well.
Bye.
Did you want me to?
No, not really. I mean, I think you're done in terms of what we needed to do. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much. I think
it was a delight.
Well, thank you. The fact that you were able to sort of combine the technical side of things with the soft skills, be kind to yourself. I think those are such positive messages, and like it's the most effective combination, right? Because we're sort of freaked out about the machines right now. COVID has been such a big scary thing for all of us, and now we're sort of settling down and wondering about what we're going to do next professionally. And I think a lot of people are feeling anxious. So that I thought that was fantastic, and I couldn't agree more really about the trust aspect, the empathy part. Clearly, what you're doing, so that was very nice.
Well, it was a pleasure. And if there's ever a good opportunity for you to come collaborate with us on our content marketing channels, we'll definitely happy to extend the invite as well.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. That's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I thought Nava was amazing. Clearly, she has a wealth of experience, and it was a delight to have her. Her advice about experimentation, about being true to yourself, being kind to yourself, and focusing on those soft skills were amazing. And also the future of Performance Max or Performance Max like highly automated campaigns. It sounds very amazing too, full of opportunities. So I hope you will keep discovering and learning with all of us. See you next time.